The pristine silence of Dr. Olivia Santos's luxurious office was shattered by the abrupt opening of the door. Marcus Almeida strode in, his expensive watch glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights, a full 30 minutes late for his appointment. The scent of his costly cologne momentarily overpowered the sterile hospital smell, a jarring reminder of the world outside these clinical walls. Dr. Santos had been reviewing Marcus's file when he entered, her dark eyes quickly taking in his pallid complexion, partially hidden beneath a mask of arrogance. She stood, extending her hand in greeting, which Marcus barely acknowledged before settling into the plush chair across from her desk. As Olivia began to explain the test results, the steady ticking of Marcus's watch seemed to grow louder, punctuating the tense atmosphere. She spoke in measured tones, her voice calm and professional, as she confirmed the diagnosis of a rare form of cancer. The words hung heavy in the air, seeming to absorb the cold light from the fluorescent bulbs overhead. Marcus's reaction was immediate and volatile. His face contorted with fury, the pale skin flushing an angry red as he vehemently denied the possibility of the diagnosis. His voice rose, drowning out Olivia's attempts at explanation. Each time she tried to interject with facts or reassurances, Marcus cut her off, his words becoming increasingly hostile and personal. The tension in the room escalated rapidly. Marcus's fear, thinly veiled behind his anger, was palpable. He lashed out, questioning Olivia's competence, her credentials, even insinuating that her race might be a factor in what he deemed a misdiagnosis. His words were carefully chosen barbs, designed to humiliate and undermine. Throughout the onslaught, Olivia maintained her composure, her face a mask of professional detachment. But beneath the surface, each insult landed like a physical blow. She had faced discrimination before, but rarely so blatantly, so cruelly. As Marcus's tirade reached its peak, he stood abruptly, the sudden movement causing his chair to screech against the polished floor. He towered over Olivia, using his height to intimidate as he delivered a final, scathing remark about her capabilities as a doctor. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Marcus's heavy breathing and the relentless ticking of his watch. Olivia remained seated, her posture rigid, eyes fixed on the medical charts before her. She had weathered the storm of Marcus's anger, but the cost to her dignity was evident in the slight tremor of her hands as she gathered the scattered papers. Marcus stormed out of the office, leaving behind a wake of emotional devastation and the lingering scent of his expensive perfume. As the door slammed shut, Olivia finally allowed her professional mask to slip, revealing the hurt and anger beneath. She took a deep breath, the sterile hospital air filling her lungs, a reminder of her purpose and the battles she had fought to reach this position. The incident had set the tone for their relationship, a complex web of power dynamics, prejudice, and denied vulnerability. Neither could have foreseen how this contentious beginning would evolve into a life-altering journey for both of them. The sterile atmosphere of the hospital examination room was punctuated by the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment. Dr. Olivia Santos had steeled herself for this follow-up examination, her professional demeanor firmly in place as she awaited Marcus Almeida's arrival. The memory of their last volatile encounter lingered in the air, as tangible as the scent of disinfectant. Marcus entered the room, his earlier bravado somewhat diminished by the clinical setting. The crinkle of the paper-covered examination table betrayed his discomfort as he settled onto it. An uneasy silence fell between them, broken only by Olivia's calm, methodical instructions as she began the physical examination. As Olivia's dark hands moved expertly across Marcus's pale skin, the contrast was stark. Her touch was clinical, detached, yet Marcus couldn't help but feel exposed, vulnerable. The tension in the room was palpable, a holdover from their previous confrontation. It was during a routine check of Marcus's lymph nodes that Olivia's practiced movements suddenly faltered. Her eyes widened, fixating on a distinctive birthmark just below Marcus's collarbone. The mark was unmistakable, a perfect mirror of the one Olivia herself bore, hidden beneath her white coat. Time seemed to stand still as the implications of this discovery crashed over Olivia. Her mind raced, connecting impossible dots, while outwardly she struggled to maintain her composure. The beeping of the medical equipment seemed to grow louder, matching the frantic pace of her heartbeat. Marcus, acutely aware of the sudden change in Olivia's demeanor, tensed. His eyes narrowed with suspicion, tracking every minute change in her expression. The earlier vulnerability gave way to irritation as he sensed something amiss in the doctor's behavior. Olivia forced herself to continue the examination, her movements now hurried and less precise. She avoided meeting Marcus's gaze, focusing instead on completing the necessary checks as quickly as possible. Her hands, usually steady, trembled slightly as she made notes on his chart. The tension reached a breaking point as Olivia hastily concluded the examination. Marcus, no longer content to remain silent, demanded an explanation for her strange behavior. His voice, sharp with accusation, cut through the room, causing the attending nurse to flinch. Olivia's response was evasive, her words carefully chosen to reveal nothing of the tumultuous emotions roiling beneath her professional exterior. She deflected Marcus' questions with practiced ease, citing medical privacy and the need for further tests. As Marcus reluctantly prepared to leave, his suspicion had not abated. He cast one last searching look at Olivia, as if trying to peel away the layers of her composure to the truth beneath. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Olivia alone with the weight of her discovery. In the sudden silence, Olivia leaned heavily against the examination table, her mind a whirlwind of shock, hope, and fear. The birthmark she had glimpsed on Marcus's skin had opened a Pandora's box of possibilities and potential heartbreak. As she stood there, the rhythmic beeping of the medical equipment a steady counterpoint to her racing thoughts, Olivia knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The mark of destiny had revealed itself, setting in motion a chain of events that would irrevocably alter both their lives. The tenuous connection between doctor and patient had suddenly become infinitely more complex, laden with unspoken truths and long-buried secrets. The soft glow of a solitary lamp illuminated Dr. Olivia Santos's living room, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, marking the passage of time as Olivia sat surrounded by cardboard boxes, their contents spilled across the carpet. The musty scent of old paper and dust hung heavy in the air, a tangible reminder of memories long buried. With trembling hands, Olivia had carefully extracted each item from the boxes, laying them out before her like pieces of a fragmented puzzle. Faded photographs, their edges worn and curling, captured moments frozen in time. Her fingers traced the outline of her younger self, eyes bright with hope, her swollen belly a promise of the future. Hospital documents, their official letterhead stark against the yellowed paper, detailed the progression of a pregnancy that had ended in heartbreak. As Olivia sifted through the remnants of her past, a pattern began to emerge. Dates aligned, timelines converged, and a chilling realization took root in her mind. The age of the son she had lost matched perfectly with Marcus Almeida's current age. The coincidence was too precise to ignore, yet too painful to fully embrace. Hi, Mrs. Touching Stories here. Enjoying the story? Subscribe now, like, and comment to catch all the upcoming emotions. Unbidden, memories long suppressed surged to the surface. Olivia's mind was thrust back to that fateful day, the day her world had shattered. The sterile hospital room, the confusion, the overwhelming sense of loss, it all came rushing back with startling clarity. She could almost hear the echoes of her own desperate cries, pleading for answers that never came. The weight of these revelations pressed down on Olivia, threatening to crush her beneath their implications. Yet, amidst the turmoil of emotions, a spark of determination ignited. She knew she could not rest until she had uncovered the full truth of Marcus' history. With renewed purpose, Olivia began to gather the scattered documents, her mind already formulating a plan of action. She would need to be cautious, methodical in her approach. The stakes were too high for hasty conclusions or reckless actions. As the night wore on, Olivia's apartment remained a silent witness to her internal struggle. The muffled sound of her occasional sobs echoed through the empty rooms, a poignant reminder of the years of grief and longing that had led to this moment. By the time the first rays of dawn began to filter through the curtains, Olivia had made her decision. She would pursue this investigation, wherever it might lead. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with potential heartbreak and disappointment. Yet the possibility of reconnecting with her long-lost child, of filling the void that had haunted her for decades, propelled her forward. As Olivia carefully repacked the boxes, her fingers lingered on a small, grainy ultrasound image. It was the last tangible link to the child she had carried, a ghostly outline of what might have been. With a deep breath, she placed it in her purse. It would serve as both a talisman and a reminder of the stakes in the journey that lay ahead. The apartment fell silent once more as Olivia prepared to face the day, the echoes of the past now an integral part of her present. The road ahead was uncertain, but Olivia was determined to follow it to its end, wherever it might lead. The sleek, modern office of Marcus Almeida stood as a testament to his success, its polished surfaces and minimalist design exuding an air of power and control. On this particular morning, the carefully cultivated atmosphere of calm efficiency was about to be shattered. Dr. Olivia Santos strode purposefully through the outer office, her simple attire a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings. The startled secretary barely had time to protest before Olivia pushed open the heavy oak door to Marcus's inner sanctum. Marcus looked up from his desk, his expression morphing from surprise to annoyance as he recognized his uninvited visitor. The ticking of an expensive wall clock seemed to grow louder in the tense silence that followed. Olivia had rehearsed this moment countless times, but now, faced with Marcus's cold stare, words failed her momentarily. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. With trembling hands, she reached into her bag and produced the documents she had gathered. As Olivia began to explain her discovery, her voice wavered between hope and desperation. She laid out the evidence: dates, medical records, the uncanny similarities that could not be mere coincidence. With each word, she saw Marcus' expression harden, his jaw clenching tight. When Olivia finally uttered the words she had come to say, claiming to be Marcus's biological mother, the office erupted into chaos. Marcus shot to his feet, his chair crashing against the wall behind him. His face contorted with a mixture of fury and disbelief as he hurled accusations at Olivia, labeling her a fraud, a con artist seeking to exploit his wealth and position. Olivia tried to interject, to present the physical evidence she had brought, but Marcus refused to look at it. His voice rose to a shout, drowning out her pleas for him to listen. The luxurious office seemed to shrink around them, the tension palpable in the air. As Marcus's tirade continued, Olivia felt a bitter taste of rejection rising in her throat. She had known this would not be easy, but the vehemence of Marcus's denial cut deep. She watched as the man she believed to be her long-lost son paced the room like a caged animal, his breathing ragged and uneven. In a final, desperate attempt to make Marcus understand, Olivia stepped forward, reaching out to him. This proved to be a mistake. Marcus recoiled as if her touch might burn him, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and anger. In that moment, Olivia glimpsed the scared child beneath the successful man's exterior, and her heart ached with a renewed sense of loss. Marcus's next words cut through the air like a whip. He threatened legal action, warning Olivia that he would use every resource at his disposal to destroy her if she persisted with her claims. The venom in his voice left no doubt about the seriousness of his threat. With a curt gesture, Marcus summoned security. Olivia found herself being escorted from the office, the evidence she had brought scattered across the polished floor. As the elevator doors closed behind her, she caught a final glimpse of Marcus, his face a mask of fury and confusion. In the quiet of the descending elevator, the full weight of what had transpired settled on Olivia's shoulders. She had risked everything on this confrontation, and it had backfired spectacularly. The taste of defeat was bitter in her mouth, but beneath it, a spark of determination remained. She knew the truth, and no amount of denial could change that. As she stepped out into the bustling street, Olivia resolved that this setback would not be the end. The battle for her son had only just begun. The sun-dappled streets of Olivia's old neighborhood seemed frozen in time, a stark contrast to the modern cityscape she had left behind. As she walked along the familiar sidewalks, the scent of aged oak trees filled the air, stirring long-dormant memories. The distant laughter of children playing in a nearby park echoed faintly, a bittersweet reminder of the son she had lost so many years ago. Olivia had returned to this place with a singular purpose: to unearth the truth that had been buried beneath years of lies and misdirection. Her first stop was the local community center, where she hoped to find records or individuals who might remember the events surrounding her child's disappearance. As she sifted through dusty files and faded photographs, Olivia's heart sank. The official narrative painted a damning picture of her past self, a young, unstable woman deemed unfit for motherhood. Dr. Ricardo, her former partner, and the man she had once trusted, had systematically spread these falsehoods throughout the community after the baby had been taken. The weight of these discoveries pressed heavily on Olivia's shoulders. She struggled against a rising tide of guilt, questioning why she had not fought harder in the past. The worn texture of old documents beneath her fingertips served as a tangible link to those painful memories. Determined to understand her legal standing, Olivia sought the counsel of a seasoned attorney. In the sterile confines of the law office, she laid out her case, her voice steady despite the emotional turmoil within. The lawyer's measured responses offered little comfort, highlighting the complex legal and ethical quagmire she faced. As the day wore on, Olivia's search led her to a weathered house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. Here she encountered Mrs. Ramirez, an elderly neighbor who had lived in the area for decades. The old woman's rheumy eyes widened with recognition as Olivia introduced herself. Over cups of strong, bitter coffee, Mrs. Ramirez recounted the events of that fateful day when Olivia's world had shattered. Her trembling voice painted a vivid picture of confusion and heartbreak, of a young mother's desperate pleas as her child was taken away. This first-hand account, untainted by Dr. Ricardo's manipulations, provided Olivia with the first solid piece of evidence to support her claims. Armed with this new information and a renewed sense of purpose, Olivia spent the following days meticulously gathering every shred of evidence she could find. She pored over old newspaper clippings, tracked down former acquaintances, and compiled a detailed timeline of events. Each discovery brought with it a fresh wave of pain, forcing Olivia to relive the trauma of her past. Yet, with each piece of the puzzle that fell into place, she felt a growing strength. The truth, long suppressed, was finally coming to light. As twilight fell on her final day in the old neighborhood, Olivia stood before her former home. The house, now occupied by strangers, bore little resemblance to the place where her dreams of motherhood had once flourished. A cool breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying with it the faint echoes of a life long past. Clutching her hard-won evidence, Olivia turned away from the house. The path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with legal and emotional obstacles. But as she walked away from the shadows of her past, Olivia's resolve hardened. She had unearthed the buried secrets, and now she was prepared to use them to reclaim the future that had been stolen from her so long ago. The journey back to the present day loomed before her, promising further challenges and potential heartbreak. Yet Olivia moved forward with determination, the weight of her newfound knowledge, both a burden and a source of strength. The truth, once buried, had been brought into the light, and nothing would ever be the same again. The sterile atmosphere of the hospital's conference room was charged with an almost palpable tension. Dr. Olivia Santos sat at the head of the long table, her posture rigid, hands clasped tightly to mask their slight tremor. Across from her, Marcus Almeida lounged in his chair, an air of irritation barely concealing his unease. The room was filled with an assortment of medical professionals and legal representatives, their presence adding gravity to the impending confrontation. Olivia had meticulously prepared for this moment, arranging every piece of evidence with precision. As she began her presentation, her voice remained steady, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil churning within her. She methodically laid out the timeline of events, corroborated by the documents and testimonies she had gathered during her journey into the past. Marcus's initial reaction was one of dismissive anger. His eyes narrowed as he scoffed at each piece of evidence, his body language screaming defiance. However, as Olivia continued to present irrefutable facts, doubt began to creep into his expression. The carefully constructed reality he had lived in for decades began to crumble around him. The turning point came when the medical team presented their findings. DNA tests conducted without Marcus's knowledge using samples from his recent medical examinations confirmed beyond any doubt the genetic link between him and Olivia. The revelation fell upon the room like a thunderbolt, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Marcus's transformation was both sudden and profound. The arrogant facade cracked, revealing the vulnerable man beneath. His face, once flushed with anger, drained of color. His hands, which had been clenched into fists, now trembled uncontrollably. The weight of the truth seemed to physically press down on him, causing his shoulders to slump. Olivia watched this metamorphosis with a mixture of relief and heartache. The vindication she had sought for so long was tempered by the obvious pain Marcus was experiencing. She fought the urge to reach out to him, knowing that any attempt at comfort would likely be rebuffed. As the implications of the revelation sank in, Marcus cycled through a gamut of emotions. Denial gave way to rage, his voice rising as he hurled accusations at Olivia, the medical team, even his own lawyers. But the facts were undeniable, and gradually the fight drained out of him. In its place came a shocked silence, Marcus's eyes darting around the room, as if seeking an escape from this new reality. The tension in the room shifted, becoming something more complex. The assembled professionals exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to proceed in the face of such a personal and emotional revelation. Olivia's hands shook as she gathered her documents, the rustling of paper seeming unnaturally loud in the stilted atmosphere. As the meeting drew to a close, the contrast between Olivia and Marcus could not have been starker. Olivia stood tall, her face a mask of compassionate determination. She had fought for this truth and was prepared to face whatever came next. Marcus, on the other hand, seemed to have physically shrunk in his chair. The once confident businessman now appeared lost, his world irrevocably altered. The participants filed out of the room, leaving Olivia and Marcus alone in the aftermath of the revelation. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken words and years of lost time. As Olivia gathered her belongings, she cast one last look at Marcus. In that moment, she saw not the successful adult, but the child she had lost so many years ago. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with legal battles and emotional reckonings. But for now, the truth had finally come to light, and there was no going back. The opulent halls of Marcus Almeida's mansion echoed with an oppressive silence. Hi, Mrs. Touching Stories here. Enjoying the story? Subscribe now, like and comment to catch all the upcoming emotions. In the days following the devastating revelation at the hospital, Marcus had retreated into his lavish sanctuary, shutting out the world that suddenly seemed foreign and hostile. His usually bustling home stood eerily quiet, with only the occasional whisper of his personal assistant's footsteps breaking the stillness. Surrounded by the trappings of his success, Marcus found himself adrift in a sea of uncertainty. He had dismissed his staff, save for his most trusted assistant, who now moved like a ghost through the cavernous rooms, leaving trays of untouched food outside Marcus's study door. In this self-imposed exile, Marcus began a painful journey through his past. He pulled out old family albums, their leather covers creaking as he opened them for the first time in years. As he flipped through the glossy pages, a glaring absence became apparent. There were no photos of his mother. The faces that stared back at him were those of his father and various relatives, all sharing the same pale complexion that Marcus had always taken for granted. As he delved deeper into these memories, fragments of conversations long forgotten began to surface. His father's voice, once a source of guidance and authority, now took on a sinister tone in Marcus's recollection. Casual comments, dismissive remarks about people of color, and thinly veiled racist jokes that had once passed without notice now stood out in stark relief. Marcus felt a wave of nausea as he realized the extent of the prejudice that had colored his upbringing. In a fit of anger and confusion, Marcus lashed out at the nearest reminder of his father. The sound of shattering glass pierced the silence as a framed photograph crashed to the floor. The image of his father, smiling confidently, now lay among shards of broken glass, a fitting metaphor for Marcus's shattered worldview. Seeking solace, or perhaps oblivion, Marcus turned to his well-stocked bar. The rich aroma of aged whiskey filled the air as he poured himself a generous glass. The expensive liquor, once a symbol of his success, now tasted bitter on his tongue. Each sip failed to dull the ache of betrayal and self-doubt that gnawed at him. As the days wore on, Marcus's search for answers led him to a locked drawer in his father's old desk. Inside, he discovered a cache of documents that his father had kept hidden for decades. Birth certificates, legal papers, and old letters corroborated Olivia's story in undeniable detail. The truth that Marcus had so vehemently denied now stared back at him in black and white. Overwhelmed by these revelations, Marcus found himself drawn to the attic, a place he had not visited since childhood. Among the dust-covered relics of his past, he uncovered a small, worn blanket. As he ran his fingers over its soft fabric, a long-forgotten memory stirred, a sense of comfort and security that he had not felt in years. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to imagine the mother he never knew, holding him, comforting him. This moment of vulnerability was short-lived, quickly replaced by a torrent of conflicting emotions. Anger at his father's deception warred with a lifetime of loyalty and respect. Guilt over his own internalized prejudices clashed with a desperate desire to cling to the identity he had always known. Marcus found himself questioning every aspect of his life, from his business practices to his personal relationships. As night fell on the 7th day of his seclusion, Marcus stood at the window of his study, staring out at the manicured grounds of his estate. The man reflected in the glass was a stranger to him, neither the confident businessman he had been, nor the son of the woman he had just discovered. He was adrift, caught between two worlds, unsure of his place in either. The price of prejudice had been high, costing him not only his relationship with his biological mother, but also his sense of self. As Marcus contemplated the long road ahead, he realized that the hardest journey would not be reconciling with Olivia, but reconciling with himself. The comfortable illusions of his past had been shattered, leaving him to face a future filled with uncomfortable truths and difficult choices. The sterile air of the private hospital room was punctuated by the rhythmic beeping of cardiac monitors, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. Marcus Almeida, once the picture of success and vitality, lay pale and diminished against the stark white sheets. The rapid decline of his health had caught everyone off guard, transforming the man who had once commanded boardrooms into a shadow of his former self. As Marcus's condition deteriorated, the hospital administration had made a difficult decision. Despite the personal tension and recent revelations, Dr. Olivia Santos was called in as the leading specialist in Marcus's rare form of cancer. The irony of the situation was not lost on either of them as Olivia stepped into the room, her dark skin a stark contrast to Marcus's sickly pallor. The atmosphere in the room was thick with unspoken emotions as Olivia began her examination. Her touch, though clinical, carried a weight that both she and Marcus felt acutely. Every movement, every question asked and answered was laden with the knowledge of their newly discovered connection. As Olivia reviewed the latest test results, her professional demeanor faltered momentarily. The news was grim. Marcus needed an urgent bone marrow transplant. The room fell silent, save for the persistent beeping of the monitors as the gravity of the situation sank in. The medical team, aware of the complex personal dynamics at play, delivered the next piece of information with careful neutrality. After extensive testing, it had been determined that Olivia was the only compatible donor available. The revelation hung in the air, its implications profound and far-reaching. Marcus' reaction was a complex mixture of emotions. The proud businessman who had built an empire through sheer force of will now found himself dependent on the very woman he had rejected so vehemently. His face, already pale from illness, seemed to lose what little color remained as he grappled with this new reality. Olivia, for her part, struggled to maintain her professional composure. The maternal instincts she had suppressed for so long warred with her duty as a physician. Every labored breath Marcus took, every fluctuation in his vital signs displayed on the monitors, tugged at her heart in ways she had not anticipated. As the day wore on, the tension in the room ebbed and flowed. Marcus oscillated between moments of stubborn resistance and periods of quiet resignation. His eyes, sunken and shadowed, would occasionally meet Olivia's, conveying a complex mix of fear, resentment, and a grudging plea for help. Olivia moved through her duties with practiced efficiency, but each interaction with Marcus was charged with unspoken emotions. The simple act of adjusting his IV or checking his vitals became a delicate dance of professional duty and maternal concern. The antiseptic smell of the hospital, once a comforting familiarity to Olivia, now seemed oppressive. It permeated everything, a constant reminder of the dire circumstances that had brought them together once again. For Marcus, the scent was a new torment, each breath a reminder of his vulnerability and dependence. As night fell, casting long shadows across the room, the reality of their situation became inescapable. Marcus's life now hung in the balance, and Olivia held the key to his survival. The biological connection that Marcus had so vehemently denied now stood as his only hope. In the quiet of the night, with only the steady beep of monitors for company, both Marcus and Olivia faced their own internal struggles. Marcus grappled with the erosion of his independence and the fear of placing his life in the hands of a woman he had rejected. Olivia wrestled with the weight of responsibility, both as a doctor and as a mother who had been given an unexpected second chance. As a new day approached, the shadow of illness loomed large over them both. The path forward was unclear, fraught with medical uncertainties and emotional minefields. What was clear, however, was that the next steps they took would irrevocably alter the course of both their lives. The disease that threatened to take Marcus's life had also, paradoxically, forced a connection that neither of them could any longer deny. The soft burble of a small water fountain filled the hospital's therapy room, its gentle rhythm a stark contrast to the tumultuous emotions of its occupants. Dr. Olivia Santos and Marcus Almeida sat facing each other, their postures tense and guarded. Between them, a therapist observed silently, ready to guide them through the treacherous waters of their shared past and uncertain future. As the sessions progressed over the days, the sterile hospital air became heavy with unspoken words and suppressed emotions. Olivia, her voice sometimes faltering but never breaking, began to unravel the painful tapestry of her past. She spoke of the day Marcus was taken from her, of the crushing weight of loss, and the insidious tendrils of prejudice that had threatened to suffocate her dreams. Marcus listened, at first with reluctance, then with growing horror, as the full impact of systemic racism on Olivia's life became clear. The casual prejudices he had grown up with, the offhand remarks he had never questioned, suddenly took on a sinister new light. He found himself flinching at memories of his own past behavior, seeing it through Olivia's eyes for the first time. As Olivia shared her struggles, the years of fighting against a system designed to hold her back, Marcus began to see her not just as a doctor or a newly discovered mother, but as a woman of incredible strength and resilience. The respect he had grudgingly afforded her professional accomplishments deepened into something more profound, a dawning understanding of the obstacles she had overcome. The therapist guided them through exercises designed to break down barriers and foster understanding. In one particularly poignant moment, they were asked to discuss their expectations and preconceptions of each other. Marcus, his voice hoarse with emotion, admitted to the prejudices that had colored his initial reactions to Olivia. The confession hung in the air, heavy with implications. Olivia, for her part, struggled to balance the years of pain and longing with her desire for connection. Hi, Mrs. Touching Stories here. Enjoying the story? Subscribe now, like and comment to catch all the upcoming emotions. She found herself torn between the instinct to protect her heart and the hope of forging a relationship with the son she had lost so long ago. Her hands, usually steady in the operating room, trembled slightly as she spoke of her fears and hopes. As the sessions continued, a subtle shift began to occur. The hard lines of Marcus's expression gradually softened, vulnerability replacing his habitual mask of arrogance. Olivia, too, found her rigid professional demeanor melting away, allowing glimpses of the warm, caring woman beneath. The turning point came unexpectedly. During a particularly intense session, as Olivia recounted a painful incident of discrimination early in her medical career, Marcus reached out instinctively. His hand, pale and weakened by illness, came to rest on Olivia's dark, capable ones. The warmth of that simple touch spoke volumes, bridging a gap that had seemed insurmountable only days before. In that moment, Marcus found the courage to do what he had never done before. he asked for forgiveness. His voice, barely above a whisper, cracked with emotion as he acknowledged the pain he had caused, not just recently, but through a lifetime of unexamined prejudice. Olivia's response was not immediate. Years of hurt and disappointment warred with the maternal love she had carried for so long. But as she looked into Marcus's eyes, seeing genuine remorse and a desperate desire for connection, she felt something within her begin to shift. As the therapy sessions drew to a close, both Marcus and Olivia found themselves on unfamiliar ground. The path to true reconciliation stretched before them, daunting in its complexity. The urgency of Marcus's physical condition added a layer of tension to their emotional journey, a constant reminder of the high stakes involved. They left the therapy room that final day, not as strangers or adversaries, but as two people taking the first tentative steps towards understanding. The sound of the water fountain followed them out, a gentle reminder of the healing that had begun and the long journey still ahead. The road to redemption would not be easy. Years of ingrained beliefs and painful experiences could not be erased in a few therapy sessions. But as Marcus and Olivia walked side by side down the hospital corridor, there was a new sense of possibility in the air. The first steps had been taken, and though the path ahead was uncertain, they were, for the first time, facing it together. The antiseptic smell of the hospital's surgical center permeated the air as Dr. Olivia Santos prepared for the most significant operation of her life. The cold, sterile environment contrasted sharply with the warmth of emotion that filled her heart. Across the room, Marcus Almeida lay on a gurney, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a vulnerability that was palpable. As the medical team bustled around them, making final preparations, Olivia and Marcus found themselves in a moment of unexpected privacy. The weight of their shared history and the uncertainty of their future hung between them. In hushed tones, they engaged in a conversation that was both profound and emotionally charged. Words that had been left unspoken for decades finally found voice, filling the space between them with a mixture of regret, hope, and tentative understanding. Marcus, his voice hoarse with emotion, expressed a gratitude that went beyond the physical gift of life Olivia was about to give him. He spoke of newfound perspective, of seeing the world through different eyes. Olivia, in turn, shared her own journey of pain and resilience, offering Marcus a glimpse into the strength that had sustained her through years of loss and struggle. As the anesthesiologist approached, signaling the imminent start of the procedure, Olivia and Marcus exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Their hands met in a firm handshake, a gesture that carried the weight of their complicated past and the promise of a potential future. The rhythmic hum of the anesthesia machine filled the room, marking the beginning of their shared journey into the unknown. The surgery itself was a testament to medical precision and human resilience. Olivia's cells, carefully extracted and processed, found their way into Marcus's weakened body, carrying with them the hope of healing and renewal. As the hours ticked by, the surgical team worked with focused determination, acutely aware of the personal stakes involved in this particular procedure. In the recovery room, as the effects of anesthesia slowly wore off, Marcus and Olivia found themselves in adjacent beds, separated by a thin curtain but united by an invisible bond. The soft beeping of monitors and the hushed voices of nurses created a cocoon of safety around them. As consciousness returned, bringing with it the discomfort of recovery, they also experienced a newfound sense of connection. Over the following days, as Marcus's body began the process of accepting Olivia's cells, a parallel process of emotional healing took root. Their conversations, once fraught with tension and unspoken accusations, gradually took on a tone of cautious optimism. They began to explore the possibility of a shared future, one that neither had dared to imagine before. Olivia spoke of her extended family, a vibrant tapestry of individuals who had supported her through her darkest times. Marcus, initially hesitant, found himself intrigued by the prospect of connecting with this unknown part of his heritage. They made tentative plans for introductions and family gatherings, each suggestion a small step towards bridging the chasm that had separated them for so long. As Marcus's strength slowly returned, so did a new perspective on life. The arrogance that had once defined him gave way to a humility born of gratitude and newfound understanding. He began to see his success not just as a personal achievement, but as part of a larger legacy of resilience inherited from Olivia. For Olivia, the experience was a whirlwind of emotions. The professional satisfaction of a successful medical procedure blended with the personal joy of reconnecting with her long-lost son. She found herself navigating the delicate balance between her role as a doctor and her emerging identity as a mother, each interaction with Marcus a careful dance of professional boundaries and maternal instincts. As dawn broke on the day of Marcus's release from the hospital, soft light filtered through the window of his recovery room, casting a warm glow that seemed to symbolize new beginnings. Olivia stood by his bedside, her dark skin contrasting with the crisp white of her doctor's coat, a visual representation of the two worlds that had collided and were now slowly merging. The future remained uncertain, filled with potential challenges and unresolved issues. The road to full physical recovery for Marcus would be long, mirroring the journey of emotional healing that lay ahead for both of them. Yet as they prepared to leave the hospital, there was a sense of cautious hope in the air. They had been given a second chance, not just at life, but at forging a connection that had been denied them for too long. As they stepped out of the hospital together, squinting in the bright sunlight, both Olivia and Marcus knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The process of rebirth, both physical and emotional, had only just begun. The path ahead was uncharted, but for the first time they were ready to face it together. The city park bustled with life on a warm Sunday afternoon, the air filled with the mingled scents of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. Beneath the shade of an ancient oak tree, an unusual gathering was taking place. Dr. Olivia Santos and Marcus Almeida sat at the center of a vibrant group, their faces reflecting a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. This was no ordinary picnic. It marked Marcus's first introduction to Olivia's extended family, a moment that both had anticipated with equal parts excitement and trepidation. The colorful array of dishes spread across the checkered blanket told a story of cultural heritage, each one a testament to the rich history Marcus was only beginning to discover. As Marcus was introduced to cousins, aunts, uncles, and finally Olivia's grandmother, he found himself overwhelmed by the warmth of their welcome. The matriarch of the family, her face etched with the wisdom of years, took Marcus's hands in hers, her eyes searching his face for echoes of the child she had never known. The moment was charged with emotion, bridging decades of separation in a single, silent exchange. Throughout the afternoon, stories flowed as freely as the laughter. Tales of family triumphs and struggles, of cultural traditions and shared experiences, wove a tapestry of heritage that Marcus had never known was his. He listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions, his eyes wide with the wonder of discovery. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt the profound sense of belonging that comes from understanding one's roots. As the day progressed, the conversation turned to the future. Marcus, his voice filled with a new sense of purpose, shared his plans for change within his company. He spoke of diversity initiatives and community outreach programs, ideas born from his recent experiences and newfound understanding. The family listened with pride and offered suggestions, their collective wisdom providing a fresh perspective on Marcus's business endeavors. Olivia, watching her son interact with her family, felt a surge of joy that she had scarcely dared to hope for. The wound of separation, which had ached for so many years, began to heal as she witnessed Marcus embracing his heritage. She shared her own plans, speaking of community health projects she had long dreamed of implementing. To her surprise and delight, Marcus eagerly offered to collaborate, his business acumen complementing her medical expertise. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the park, the gathering showed no signs of winding down. The sound of animated conversations and spontaneous laughter filled the air, punctuated by the clinking of plates and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. Marcus found himself at the center of a spirited discussion about family recipes, his usual reserve melting away as he eagerly sampled dishes he had never tasted before. The transition wasn't without its challenges. Hi, Mrs. Touching Stories here. Enjoying the story? Subscribe now, like, and comment to catch all the upcoming emotions. There were moments of awkwardness, instances where cultural differences became apparent, and times when the weight of lost years made itself felt. Yet each obstacle was met with patience and understanding from both sides, a testament to the strength of the bonds being forged. As the evening drew to a close, Marcus and Olivia stood slightly apart from the group, watching as the family packed up the remnants of the picnic. The breeze had picked up, carrying with it the promise of change and new beginnings. Marcus turned to Olivia, his expression one of gratitude and wonder. For the first time, he truly understood the meaning of family beyond mere biological connection. The journey ahead was still uncertain. There were relationships to be built, trust to be earned, and a lifetime of separation to be bridged. But as they walked out of the park, surrounded by their newfound family, both Marcus and Olivia felt a sense of hope that had been absent for far too long. The city lights began to twinkle as dusk fell, mirroring the spark of new possibilities that had been ignited that day. Marcus and Olivia's story was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But with each step forward, they moved closer to a future neither had dared to imagine, one of reconciliation, understanding, and the unbreakable bonds of family.